risk shifting, living artists aren't dead yet, and I demand justice or a settlement. Welcome to the Unlimited Supply Podcast, your daily music business TLDR in your ear, powered by a shower of queeners and rods, and brought to you by No Disc, helping music technology and finance companies navigate the music industry in partnership with Digital Music News. It's July 17th, 2026. I'm Lars Murray. It's another Finance Friday, but before we dive into the shallow money trench, it's Christmas in July as the Luminate half-year report hit the virtual newsstands this week, and let's get right into the findings. The big story over the last 24 months or so has been that growth in global on-demand audio streams has been much faster outside the USA, and that's still the case. USA streaming grew 9.8% in half one of 2026, while the ex-US figure grew by 11.8%. There's nothing wrong with an investment that returns 10 or 11%, but that number looks a lot better in a low-inflation economy, say 2 to 3%. I'm not an economist, but it seems to me that when inflation hits 6 to 9%, that's going to cut into your effective growth rate a lot, and this is where we seem to be heading right now. In other Luminate findings, as for the balance between frontline and catalog, deep catalog now accounts for around 55% of all streaming. Shallow catalog, that's from 18 to 60 months out, accounts for 20%, and frontline is now at 25%, which points to a more stable business, which is attractive to investors, but that also may in turn inhibit the appetite for risk and innovation in the industry when frontline is only 25% of the overall business. In 2026, we are truly in the upside down when music looks like a stable, low-risk investment at the same time that tech billionaires are pitching extraterrestrial data centers to boost their IPOs and publicly beefing like Drake and Kendrick or maybe Pink Floyd. The true underlying reality is that there is still a ton of risk and reward and failure in the industry. It's just that in the social media era, most of that risk that labels used to take on has been shifted to the artists and songwriters who do a lot more of their own artist development legwork than they used to. So good job, financial community, I guess. Getting back to Luminate, on the genre side, R&B and hip-hop have now shed 10 points of Billboard 200 market share since 2023. Latin and country are basically picking up that slack, and U.S. Latin is at an all-time peak, with Latin hitting 54% of casual listeners, up 10 points from 2021. As for the physical market, it truly does look like CDs are coming back. They were up 16% to 16 million sold in the half. As for superfans, here's an interesting one. 22% of all music listeners qualify as purchase-based superfans. 17% qualify as engagement-based superfans. Now, the big prize is the 11% overlap between those two. The overlap between purchase-based and engagement-based superfans, 11%, that's where the money is. Luminate also covered AI music, and I think, honestly, they puffed it up a little. They cited Breaking Rust's 19 million streams for its top track, but just a few months after Breaking Rust broke out, they have a paltry 14,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. This suggests to me that AI artists have a pretty ephemeral impact. By contrast, Kreayshawn, remember Gucci Gucci? Pretty much the poster child for an artist who had one viral hit and failed to launch a career. For comparison with Breaking Rust, we decided to look and see what a 15-year-old viral hit from a genuine human artist would drive in 2026. Well, to cut to the chase, Kreayshawn has 600,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. That's against Breaking Rust's 14,000. But let's introduce a third variable here, somebody with a long career but flying under the radar, like Fabienne Delsol. She has 275,000 monthly listeners. Again, Breaking Rust, 14. If you have never heard of Fabienne Delsol, that's kind of the point. More on that later. So while AI is baked into the creative process for flesh and blood human artists, AI-generated artists still have a long way to go to compete with those flesh and blood creatives. Living artists are not dead yet. There's a lot more in the report to digest. As usual, we point you to the LinkedIn feed of friend of the pod, Jamie Marconette of Luminate. Now let's dive into the shallow money trench where thieves and pimps run free. Is Suno accelerating toward an IPO? Well, over at Music Business Worldwide, Murray Stassen's headline might have you thinking that, but maybe not so fast. The evidence presented is a job posting for a director of accounting that mentions IPO readiness. But really, wouldn't any company, public or private, with a reported $300 million in annual revenue and a $5 billion valuation kind of need an accounting director to own the, quote, monthly close, consolidations, and general ledger? And wouldn't IPO readiness kind of be table stakes for that job at a company with Suno's ambitions and funding? Well, I would certainly hope so. Of course, it doesn't mean that Suno shouldn't be accelerating toward its IPO. The company famously and openly admitted from the start that thundering hordes of litigators would figure prominently in its use of investor funding, and a new revelation isn't helping on that front. Over at 404 Media, Jason Kobler reported Wednesday that hackers had managed to get inside Suno and discovered evidence that Suno had scraped millions of songs and lyrics from YouTube Music, Deezer, and Genius, as well as from stock music libraries Pondfine, Jamendo, Freesound, the International Music Score Library Project, and, to boot, podcasts via RSS feeds. Of course, the extra legal provenance of this info probably renders it inadmissible in court, but it probably won't be hard for plaintiffs like Sony Music and UMG to get the right subpoenas to access this smoking gun. Not to mention that this looks like multiple class action suits in 3, 2, 1. For me, I'll join the podcast one immediately. When you think about it, Suno's corporate comms do have a vaguely snarky tone sometimes. I hereby allege that this came from scraping Unlimited Supply's RSS feed. I demand justice, or at least a settlement. Suno, you got my digits. Whether this revelation points the needle toward an acceleration or a delay of a Suno IPO will be the interesting question in the coming weeks. And to close out Finance Friday, we can tuck the most defining story of the Unlimited Supply era into bed once and for all. Over at Music Business Worldwide, Tim Ingham reported this week that Sony Music Publishing had finally completed its acquisition of the Recognition catalog. If you still don't recognize the name Recognition, Recognition is the name that Blackstone and Company gave Hipgnosis after they stepped in, defenestrated founder Merck Mercuriadis, and put the catalog on the block. Now that Hipgnosis, Recognition, the dead elephant, or whatever you want to call it, has been absorbed back into the mothership of big publishing, the circle is complete. The Hipgnosis Epoch has given way to the post-Hipgnosis Epoch, allowing new life forms to evolve from the primordial IP ooze. And that's another Finance Friday. Support for Unlimited Supply comes from you, our listeners. And now we have Unlimited Supply supporter swag. The limited edition Unlimited Supply Black Trucker Cap is on sale in our store, bundled with a year-long premium membership. We also have Unlimited Supply merit badges, or you can just buy me a cup of coffee. It's all at unlimitedsupplypod.com. And it's time for the Song of the Week. On Monday, I asked if July was the new January, and this week I have a surplus of choices for Song of the Week. Last Friday brought a bunch of albums and songs I'm still working my way through, from known quantities like the Rolling Stones, Jack White, Margot Price, and the Linda Lindas, to new ones on me like the aforementioned Fabienne Delsol. So I'm not limiting myself to a single song this week. I can't remember when a Rolling Stones album snuck up on me without warning like Foreign Tongues did. So far, sounds pretty solid. I really like the lead track, Rough and Twisted, so that's a start. I'm like Goldilocks with my Stones. I want the guitars to sound crunchy, and I want my tempos to be a little slower, and those things don't always come together. This one seems to be hitting a lot of those points. My only real criticism is maybe that the overall production of this album feels a little 80s glossy. Earlier I was talking about Fabienne Delsol. She hit me on a bank shot from a student off a colleague who had me when he called it French pop with a touch of psychedelia. Fabienne's been around the UK and French garage rock circles as long as Jack White has, if not longer, as part of the Toe Rag Studios posse. Toe Rag, by the way, is where the White Stripes recorded Seven Nation Army. Our other song of the week is track 5 off of Fabienne Delsol's new album, Indigo Red. It's called I Have Known Love. And Fabienne, I'm just going to call you Fab. It's on our Unlimited Supply official podcast playlist on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Qobuz. There's a link in the show notes. If you have a song to submit for Song of the Week, let me know. If you like what you hear, please hit that follow button wherever you get your pods. I live for your praise and encouragement, but it helps a lot more if you follow us on Substack or drop us a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify, and tell a friend or three, preferably 21 times, because according to legendary marketing whiz Susie Schultz, it now takes not 5, but 21 times for anything to sink in. Links, including links to support us, are in the show notes, and you can also visit unlimitedsupplypod.com to sign up for our newsletter, to tell us what you think about the show, to suggest feature ideas, to feed us info, to feed us lunch, to call us out on our dubious assertions, and to tell us what we're missing out on. In the words of the great philosopher Eduardo Rivadavia, don't let your short-term greed get in the way of your long-term greed. For New Yorkers, breathe carefully. For the World Cup, go Spain. And remember, in this business, no conflict means no interest.